Not of the films I consider great, the ones that I saw this summer. There are only three of them, unfortunately. Oh well. So now, the conclusion to the Cornetto Trilogy, which is the comedic trilogy which has Nick Frost, Simon Pegg, and they're all directed by Edgar Wright. This is the third one. The first one was Shaun of the Dead, the second one was Hot Fuzz. And I thought this was a hilarious film. I haven't laughed this much in a theater in a very, very long time. I laughed a bit in Red 2, but that wasn't as funny as I wanted it to be. Simon Pegg is just awesome. Simon Pegg playing off Nick Frost and all the other actors, kind of character actors. And there's so many witty retorts, they just go by boom, 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 boom. They're really fast, and when you listen to them, you almost have to listen to them slowly. Everything is a pretty much a witty, funny line, and it was great, and I love the way the characters reacted to each other. So this movie follows Simon Pegg's character named Gary King. He has a horrible life. He can't help but live in the past, so he calls on his four friends who have all become successes, and wants to redo a pub crawl that they never finished when they were kids. And as the film goes along, they're going through their pub crawl, they're going from pub to pub, just drinking a pint. Eventually, they find out that a majority of the city has been taken over by alien robots. Or, as they say in the film, they're not robots. They're robots are slaves, but whatever, they're robots. And the whole movie is about them fighting back against these alien robots and trying to save their town and in many ways try to save the world. There are a lot of fun action scenes, there are a lot of hilarious moments when you see especially Nick Frost. He's a very good fighter apparently, and at the end of the film in the credits you actually see a reference to Jackie Chan. Apparently they got inspiration from him, and it was very well done, a lot of fun. One thing that made me wonder though, because the beginning was so good, the first 40 minutes or so, which is before the alien robots show up, the entire first 40 minutes is focused on this group of characters, and it's a lot of fun. I wonder if the whole film was centered on that, if it would have been even better. But I'm not disappointed by the fact that the robots show up. That was fun too. Another fun aspect about this film, which is similar to Hot Fuzz, is that we got another James Bond starring in one of these films. Hot Fuzz had Timothy Dalton. This film has Pierce Brosnan. And just so happens that Rosamund Pike from Die Another Day is also in the film. So it's kind of fun to see them both in the same film. So, fun movie. I enjoyed every minute of it. There's the ending, or the way the problem is resolved at the end is just hilarious, had me almost on the floor. It was great. If I was to criticize a little bit, I'd say the last 5 minutes or so were a bit confusing and strange, but I can excuse that because I enjoyed laughing at all the jokes in the film up to then. So, my second favorite film this summer, and this is gonna piss off a few of you, including David, would be Iron Man 3. I had a lot of fun with this movie, and it was a very light-hearted take on Tony Stark's character, and I like that. There's this big debate: if you don't take the movie seriously, then it all falls apart. I don't know. I want to go with what Richard Donner said when he was making the original Superman, where he said, take the material seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. With Iron Man 3, I can kind of see an argument for them not taking the material seriously, especially regarding the character of the Mandarin. So the whole movie is about Tony Stark trying to stop this terrorist who's trying to kill people, and there's a twist regarding this character. Since Mandarin's kind of the equivalent of the Joker in the Iron Man universe, the way they changed the character really made people mad. It didn't bother me. I can kind of understand why it would bother certain people. Now, a lot of people have a lot of issues with the movie, and I'll try to defend the film, I guess. There were a number of plot holes, a number of things that made me scratch my head, but they weren't to the detriment of the main plot. It helped to enforce it and wasn't something that just constantly cropped up. What made this movie shine for me was Tony Stark's story. So there's a difference between the plot and the story. The plot, yeah, there's quite a few holes. There are silly things like people who can breathe fire. I thought that was really dumb. Those are the villains, which who are affected by this extremist virus. But Tony Stark's story. This movie follows the Avengers, and at the end of the Avengers, he's almost killed, but he sees this whole open universe where all these things are. He just can't comprehend this universe that he's in anymore, and I think it's totally in character for him to be affected by that because Tony Stark's an arrogant person. He's someone who's always been in control, and then seeing that the universe is so much bigger causes him to panic for a number of reasons. One of which he doesn't think he can protect the people he cares about, including himself. He can't protect Pepper Potts either. He can't protect his friend Happy. Secondly, he's getting anxiety to be able to protect these people. He used to have a good bead on what he was in control of. He used to think he was in control of pretty much the world. And then seeing this universe expand, it would cause me to panic too. So the way that story was handled, I thought was great. And Robert Downey Jr. completely sells it every time. Even if the things he's given to do is just to be a wisecracker, he does great as that. It's kind of gotten to the point where Tony Stark has become Robert Downey Jr., but I don't mind that. One thing a lot of people complain about is that there's kind of a lack of Iron Man in this film. Well, watch the first two films again. There isn't that much Iron Man. There's more Tony Stark, and that's the same as there is with Iron Man 3. A lot of people complain about the tone. These films are all lighthearted. I don't know what the problem is. This one, there's a lot more wisecracking. Maybe there was a little bit too much, but not to the point where it was annoying. And I laughed at a lot of the lines here, and I was laughing at lines that were supposed to be funny, which is good. There's a lot of action variety in this film, which I really loved. It's not just like the first two films where Iron Man has to fight an even bigger robot. I was tired of that by the second movie. This time, there's a lot more variety. You have Tony Stark with virtually nothing. He has to fight one of the extremist soldiers in just a bar. And then there's another scene where he has to cleverly use his suit, which is more advanced now, to help him escape his collapsing house. And then there's another scene where he has to save a bunch of people falling out of an airplane. He has to do it with his wits. And I love things like that. There's also another part where he only has an Iron Man arm and an Iron Man leg, and he has to fight some bad guys with that. So really cool scenes in that regard. There's a nice resolution at the end. I know Grant and David, well, I like the ending of this film, but they don't like how it ended. Me personally, I think it's totally in keeping with his character. And for me, it doesn't preclude there being more Iron Man stories. In fact, Robert Downey Jr. signed up to be in Avengers 2, and I understand he's going to have a major role. I didn't have any problems with Iron Man 3. I really like the main story of the main character. I keep saying this, that every comic book movie needs an inner conflict. It can't just be the bad guy has to fight the good guy, or the good guy has to fight the bad guy. That was my problem with The Amazing Spider-Man. That was kind of my problem with Man of Steel. Man of Steel did have an inner conflict, but it was handled very poorly. This one, I think, handled it well. You can argue with me if you'd like. This one is kind of divided as well. It's all a matter of opinion anyway. So, my number one movie of the summer, my favorite movie this summer, Star Trek Into Darkness. Yeah, I know. This one is also divided on who likes it, who doesn't like it. Maybe it's because I'm sort of a Trekkie. I'm not a super nerd who can quote episodes or anything like that, but I'm a fan of the original series, and each subsequent series I got less and less interested. But the original series with the original characters, which is what these reboots are, who these reboots are about, I like those characters very much. Star Trek Into Darkness is a sequel to the 2009 sort of reboot, sort of sequel. I think it was kind of ingenious what they did. They rebooted the series without actually rebooting it. There's a literal second timeline. And in a sci-fi series, this would work. Not in a series like James Bond. Grant. Yeah, Grant's been suggesting that the Daniel Craig film should acknowledge that there should be a second universe, but whatever. But Star Trek, it works because it's a sci-fi series. And I really like this movie. I wouldn't say that the character development is as well done or as deep as it was in the original films, specifically 2, 3, 4, and 6. 1 and 5, there are a lot of problems I won't get into, but those films, did have a lot of characterization. They developed Kirk and Spock very well, and and also Dr. McCoy. This film does a good job with the characters. It seems like all seven of the main leads have kind of a moment to shine, which I think is great. Especially Simon Pegg. He's given a nice plot line in the movie. The standout performance for me is Carl Urban as Bones. He does an amazing job, and I wouldn't have thought that before because he always plays tough guy roles. Now he's playing Dr. McCoy. I think that's really awesome. So let's get into what this movie's about. This movie's about a crazy admiral trying to militarize Starfleet, and he's trying to cause a war between the Federation and the Klingons, and he's using the character of John Harrison, who's actually revealed to be someone else. He's using him as kind of a means to do that, and there's some neat twists in this movie, and you see a few characters crop up from the original series that you haven't seen in a long time. Characters who are important and would become important later. But kind of the main aspect of this story is the development of the friendship between Captain Kirk and Spock. It's developing their friendship, and at first they don't really like each other, and then they get along, and then there's a lot of conflict. But what it comes down to is being able to decide when it's morally correct to go out on a limb to save someone when something greater is at risk. It happens at the very beginning, not too much of a spoiler, but at the very beginning, Spock wants to sacrifice himself to save an indigenous population on a planet, and in order for Kirk to save Spock, he has to do something morally unethical, which is influence the path of these indigenous people and influence their religion by them seeing the Enterprise, their ship. And there's something inherently wrong with redirecting indigenous peoples, but he does it to save a friend. Spock kind of berates Kirk for this, and he gets into some trouble and shenanigans throughout the film. Then, at the end of the film, there's a role reversal, and I don't want to spoil that for you, but it's a reference to scenes from previous movies. Those of you who have seen the movie know exactly what I'm talking about. You might be wondering what I think about the fact that it heavily referenced an earlier film. Well, I think as long as it serves the story, it's fine. And at the end, the conflict, it does serve this story. It serves as the point of reference through Kirk and Spock's friendship and their arc as friends. And it works very well to serve the movie. It's a kind of a role reversal from a previous movie as well. There is a certain part that I was taken out of the movie because of the referencing, and it's when Spock yells a certain line. Once again, those of you who've seen the movie know exactly what I'm talking about. But, as I mentioned, I'm a bit of a Trekkie, and I enjoyed the characterization, even though it was kind of minimal compared to the old films. I think when compared to the 2009 film, the plot is much, much better. 2009 film was kind of, the plot didn't make very much sense, and the villain's motivations were very, very weak. With this film, you understand the villains better. And the side villain, who I mentioned, is someone we've seen before, where there's a twist regarding that character, John Harrison. That character is handled very well as well. In my opinion, of course. Once again, I said the characters all had their moment to shine. All the actors do very well. I enjoyed the plot. There's a lot of moral questions. Should Starfleet be militarized? They're kind of dealing with a character who's kind of a terrorist, and then you kind of get to know that character and you understand them better. It's a very well constructed film, and needless to say, there's a lot of action. J.J. Abrams is very good with action scenes. That's kind of what drove the 2009 film, and I think that's what drives this film. If I had to compare this to the older films, I'd say this is among the better ones. I wouldn't say it's the best, but I'm more of a Trekkie in that regard. I prefer more character development and less action than a little less character development and more action. But that's just me. I think the older films delved more deeply into the philosophical aspects of sci-fi, whereas the new films are more like Star Wars. And there's nothing really wrong with that. I love Star Wars, and J.J. Abrams himself is a huge fan of Star Wars, and that's probably why he's directing Star Wars Episode 7. But Star Trek Into Darkness, very well constructed movie in my opinion. I enjoyed the character arcs of the main characters. I enjoyed the villains. A lot of really good action scenes, and a few references to the old stuff that actually serve the story, except for that yell that I mentioned. So this is my favorite film from this summer. I was engaged throughout the whole film, and I enjoy these characters very much. So those are all the movies I saw in the summer. Let me know what you think of my list and my kind of mini reviews. I know some of you will disagree with certain ones, especially Man of Steel and Iron Man 3, and a lot from Star Trek Into Darkness from you Trekkies, I'm sure. So overall, not the best summer we've had for movies. There wasn't that film, as I mentioned, that everyone really rallied around. Everything got kind of mixed reviews. There were only three films that I thought were great. I was hoping for a lot more. Elysium was a good movie, but I was a little bit disappointed. I expected it to be as good as District 9. A few of the other films, I was disappointed in Man of Steel as well. There are a few movies I missed this summer. I had wanted to see The Place Beyond the Pines, and I heard The Great Gatsby was pretty good too, so I kind of wanted to see that as well. I heard a lot of praise for Fast and Furious 6, but I wasn't that interested in those stories very much. My dad wanted to see The Lone Ranger, but he lost interest at some point. But those are the movies I saw this summer. Let me know what you think below. Maybe construct a list of the movies that you saw this summer and rank them. I'm Kenneth of the Video Boys, and I hope you have a great day.